write things down, so my brain works now.
So if you have a pen and you're writing things down, your brain works?
Yeah.
Okay. I might take notes on my phone, so if I suddenly pick up my phone and start tapping, I'm not texting. I'm listening to you. I'm not just like, I'm like half doing this podcast and half just texting my buddies.
What I did notice when I listened back to it, because I must be a narcissist because I was listening back to myself. But
it was alright, that last podcast.
It was quite good, but I realised that I've got a question in my head. I'm about to ask the question.
Yeah.
But to start the question takes me quite a bit of time to get to the actual question. By the time I've got to it, I've forgotten. And I've forgotten. Yeah, exactly. And I've forgotten and forgotten again.
No, I'm better at this stuff because of the working in the schools. So I can hold disparate pieces of random facts and shit.
And shout at them.
And hold them all in my head and then shout them back at people. Listen to me, engage, give me your attention now.
Actually, before we actually question, we were talking about it at work today. How do you discipline kids now? Which is actually quite psychological. So what can teachers actually do to make kids behave?
Nothing. The education system is completely fucked. It's been fucked for a long time. The education system is massively out of date. So what they've done, like, in my day, I was at the tail end of something. You were at the tail end of something whereby there was this.
Say pseudo. I love it when people say pseudo.
It wasn't pseudo, but it was implicit. It was an implicit sort of injunction that you would obey because. And then there was like, well, why? Well, just because. And the parents and the school and the institution and the government were one unit. And then we live in this post-ideological age now where there is none of that. We were coming out of it. We would have seen that fraying at the edges. You went to a nice school and I went to a nice school. So I saw it less.
Yeah.
But it was already falling apart in my time. But I have nothing but sympathy for teachers working in the British education system now, where even the parents will side with ill-behaved children. And there's just no backup. There's just no backup for them at all. So what can teachers do to get kids to behave? What I used to do was neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis and as much mind fuckery as I could. If I could control the attention of the kids in the room and control their perception, then I could get them to sort of behave and sort of give me their attention. But even that would fall apart sometimes as well. There is no such thing as disciplining kids. Like, it's not like when our parents were at school, the teachers would just hit them, like they'd give them physical pain.
Well, see, this is what I said, and I taught for a year. I didn't teach in a classroom setting. I was looking after disabled children, and I was looking after them when they were in a class. I mean, I'd teach small classes of 4 or 5 disabled kids. But what I said straight away is that there's no physical punishment anymore. So is it as simple as we are animals? If that hurts, I won't do it again. But one of the guys at work actually pointed out that it's almost ironic that you're going to hit a kid for hitting another kid.
Yeah, it doesn't really work, and it never worked. That wasn't the point of why it worked. It wasn't the physical pain, because the physical pain is only symbolic. It was shame, and it was the sense of shame of the illusory big other is now casting a judgment against you, and that judgment will be passed out in the form of a caning or of having a ruler whacked against your hands. But that wasn't the real pain. The real pain was the humiliation, was the shame, was the sense of having fallen outside the paradigms of the tribe, and it was a kind of mini banishment that you would fight against and that you would want to come back from. That doesn't exist anymore. There is no tribe. I mean, the establishment is fighting a losing battle, but certainly the British education system is screwed. It cannot continue as it currently is for another 20, 30 years, and nor should it. It shouldn't. It's a ship without a rudder, and it's a ship without an objective. It has no place to go to.
I'm reading constantly that we're getting better. Obviously, we were saying last podcast we're more educated. We're constantly being told we're getting better scores than we ever did before, and there's more girls going to university. There's more people from different cultural backgrounds going to university. Everyone's improving. But when I went back to teach, it might be because I didn't notice it when I was actually at the same school when I was pupil there. But it was very, very, very difficult to even get the kids to sit down. And it was only the very experienced teachers could do that.
I'll tell you something. It's not just the kids now, it's adults as well. So I go to teach a seminar, and it's hard for me to get a room full of adults to sit down. It's hard to get them to stop. And I'm like, seriously, guys, you've all travelled from so far away to come to a seminar. You've paid this money to me. And they won't sit down and shut the fuck up. That whole boundary has gone. That boundary has just basically gone. So there's no way that you're going to get a room full of kids to go with it if their own parents don't do it. So it's like, the thing is with the schooling system, like we were talking last time a little bit about the reality of the virtual and how the virtual world is developing its own gravity and it's developing its own the virtual online world now becomes reality. So instead of the virtual world used to be about reality. When the internet came out, you would have a website that was about something that was happening online. MySpace profiles were predominantly about what people were doing in the real world, and all of that has stopped. The real world is now about the internet as much as the internet is about the real world. Like, we do stuff on the basis of what's going on online. So it's developing its own gravity and it's becoming this own world. So what I was going to say is, you saying about the points are getting better. It's all bullshit. And this is not conspiracy theory. I can prove it. I've been on the inside track. It's a deliberate effort to alter people's perceptions. And what we have now is a virtual point system that is only for the furtherance of the perception of the educational institutions. So we say, send your children to Rick and Will High and pay us this amount of money, because it's consumer capitalism. It's based on a point system, and he who wins the most points, which is money, wins. It's not about delivering a good education. It's about getting clients through the door and making that dollar, making that paper. Come to Rick and Will High. Why should I do that? I could go to Bob and Jeff's High down the road. Don't do that. We got 70% of our kids got A star at A level, and 20% of our kids went to Oxford and Cambridge. So how do they achieve that? So you have the final outcome, the final objective is to make your scores higher. Well, the final outcome used to be to educate some fucking human beings. But now, it's not the teacher's fault. This is what the system has given them to do. It's all about getting the scores higher. Okay, you're running a business and you know you're going to be monitored every year. And if you do not show that year on year your scores are getting higher and higher, you will be fired. So you're desperate. So what do? You just cheat. You just bring the standards down. Ask any teacher, give them a couple of pints first, who's been working for 30 years, and ask them if what I'm saying is true. And to a man and to a woman, I guarantee you, every single one of them will tell you that it's true. So they'll all say it's absolutely true, and it's a fucking outrage. It's an outrage.
Making you angry?
Oh, I think it's terrible. I am angry about it, because it's actually destroying the very fabric. And like, you might think this goes too far. I think it's destroying the very fabric of our reality.
Yeah, I get that, and we are saying that it's the parents' fault. And I'm 10 years out of university, and I've got 5 friends that were teachers. But are all not teachers now, that were teachers for not even 10 years. Yeah, because they just couldn't stand it.
Well, we should do a whole podcast on it. I left because I was asked to be a part of the scam. I was good at what I did, and they wanted me to be a part of the scam and to get kids to go to university, and they wanted me to lie to these children's faces and say, if you get a degree, you will be more employable. Go and take on 30 grand's worth of debt. Go and take on 60 grand's worth of debt. See, the debt levels weren't that high for me.
No.
We would still get quite heavily subsidised back in 1996. Now it's normal for kids to be walking around with tens of thousands of pounds worth of debt. Who do they owe that fucking debt to? The student loan company. Who owns the fucking student loan company? The government. So you want me to fucking go out and get children at the age of 18 indebted to the tune of tens of thousands of pounds to government? I fucking don't think so. This is not the podcast we were going to do.
This is not. But It did make me think of something.
I think I went into an emotional.
That was good.
Jesus Christ. Let me take a breath.
We used to take the piss out of certain parents, and we call them the "my child doesn't lie" parents.
Oh yeah.
So we'd have parents in we'd show them CCTV, and when we didn't have CCTV, we would discuss with the parents what the child had done, and they would look at the CCTV or look in our faces and say to us, "No, my child doesn't lie. He didn't do it, and if he says he didn't do it, he hasn't done it."
Yeah.
What's that all about?
I can tell you what it's all about, and it's where we're going, and it's where we're headed right now, which is one of the reasons why, I think it's important to do podcasts like this, and just to point
Richard's
it out.
currently shaking his head.
I'm shaking my head and rubbing my face vigorously. I mean, I like, my attitude is this: look, I'm not trying to stop the bus from going over the edge of the cliff. We went over the edge of the cliff. We're going to crash, but at least like, people can have an understanding of why this is going to happen. Like, doom is imminent. I don't hope for a win. I hope for a loss with honour, and that's it.
You want to go out on your shield?
Yeah. I want to go out on my shield. So, why is that happening? It's something that Freud called the Fetishist split, which is, I know very well that reality is, I don't know, the sky is blue. But I do not want to know that the sky is blue because it is not convenient for me. And so I do not know that the sky is blue. So you have this weird cognitive dissonance that people walk around with, in which they know that they are living in a split reality where they've chosen one version of reality. And every day that they do that, and every incident where they're called into school and they say, my kid doesn't do that, and you show them video of their kid doing exactly what they say they wouldn't do, and they deny it, they're investing more and more in their insanity. They're investing more and more in their fetishist split, and they're investing more and more in their cognitive dissonance. This is the world we live in. People want it all. They want everything. They want to have all of the benefits and all of the rights, but with none of the costs and none of the responsibilities. It cannot happen. And I thought it was ironic. Trump's victory music was the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want. And I was like, how smart is this guy? And is he just saying, fuck you to the liberals, sorry, you wanted Hillary Clinton, but you can't always get what you want? Or is this some deeper, more meaningful message? I saw the Illuminati behind it all because I'm a lunatic conspiracy theorist. And I was like, is Trump punishment for our stupidity, our vacuity, the fact that we have chosen the superficial, the impermanent, the crude, the profane, and the vulgar over virtue, over something that actually fucking means something? And you say virtue to people nowadays and they sneer at you. When I did that interview for those pieces of shit, those fucking scumbags at Vice, those fucking dirty fucking animals who, God, media whores, less than whores at Vice, for the narcissism documentary, those lying bastards, scum. When I did that for them, and we were talking about the roots of narcissism and how narcissism has gotten its claws into modern culture, and I said, well, people are simply forgoing virtue. The guy literally sneered in my face, and he was like, what does that mean? That's a load of fuddy-duddy nonsense. And I'm looking at him, this 30-year-old man with his haircut like he's a 6-year-old boy, his flopping bangs around his ears, his fucking skinny jeans that are up by his shins, his clodhopper shoes because he's such a hipster and he's so fucking cool. And I'm like, what do you know, mate? What do you know about anything? What do you produce in the world? I'm not going to sit here and discuss virtue with you. Your whole job is to push human consciousness down the toilet. I'm on one, aren't I?
It's excellent.
I actually felt quite sleepy before I came over.
Did you?
I was feeling pretty languid. But yeah, no, we are now invested in our fetishist split. Why? Because we know we're doomed. We know that this is it. Since I spoke to you on the last podcast, I've been looking on social media and the way people are talking and the stories that are coming up. We know we're fucked. We do. I think. When I say we, I mean the group consciousness, the group unconscious of humanity knows we're fucked. And I think that's why people are being as silly as they are. It really is the final days of Rome. Rome is burning, and you may as well just do whatever the hell you want, because what's tomorrow? I couldn't do the job that I used to do in the schools anymore. I can't go into the schools and say, hey, work hard today, kids.
Yeah.
Because tomorrow there's a brighter day.
Yeah. I get that.
With a straight face. I mean, these kids are going to be like, are you joking, blood?
Blood.
What do you mean, blood? Are you joking me, fam? I've got nothing for them. I've got no tricks up my sleeve, no story to sell where the future is bright and rosy. I mean, it's a mess.
Yeah.
It's a fucking mess. And it's not about shaming people or humiliating people and saying, oh, you guys should be doing better. It's not about that. This is just pointing out that this is where we're up to. And I'm actually past asking people to change. I don't want people to change. I don't want humanity to save itself. No. I am a true misanthrope at this point. I don't want the saving of the mass of humanity. I think the mass of humanity we could maybe do with a little bit of a, like a flood scenario.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be cruel.
Just a few.
Just more than a few.
Just to click us back in.
More than a few. Well, probably the majority. No, I think it would be, all joking aside, it would be pointless to try for that. I think what we can hope for is to survive, to learn from the mistakes, and to improve. But beyond that, that's
what I mean. That's pretty much what every civilization has done. I think when I was university, I think Pinker, was it Pinker, famous American sociologist? I think he brought out Pinker, and he said that the more civilized a culture is, the less violent it is.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the lecturers at the university sort of tearing this apart and saying, you've probably got the Roman Empire right at the very end.
Yeah.
Probably, other than now, the most highly technologically advanced, civilized place you've ever seen in your whole life. But, I mean, obviously it wasn't porn then. Completely run by porn and violence.
It was porn. They in their final days, it's not reported. We think of the amphitheater and we think of gladiators, but it was porn. There were people who would be fucked to death. They would be raped by animals. They would be tortured to death. They would be mutilated. And what do we have now? We have a genre of cinema called torture porn, where the whole point of the film is to watch a series of scenes glued together by a flimsy narrative in which human beings are tortured to death. And I say, that's too much, ladies and gents. That's like, we need to stop. And people are going, oh, boo, shut up, you fucking, you geek. You nerd. I'm like,
liberal.
You fucking liberal, you pussy, you snowflake. I'm like, guys, I don't think we should certify and classify a film in which the main narrative is people's mouths are stapled to other people's anuses and they're force-fed shit. I don't see the point of like the Serbia. It was called the Serbian film of a film in which a man is forced at gunpoint to rape a baby. Now, I've been told that it's not portrayed, it's been implied, you don't see anything. I don't care. Like, how does that film, okay, the fact that some nutter makes that film, fine. But that an institution watches that, men in suits or women in suits sit there in total sobriety in a room and go, I think we would give this an 18, but we just need to trim it down a little. What the
Just say no.
Just don't. No. Just like, we don't need a film in which people are tortured to death or force-fed excrement. Sometimes I feel like I'm beamed down from another planet. I'm like, what are we doing? And where? Okay, so I'm a fuddy-duddy. So I'm preachy, I'm didactic, I'm moralistic, whatever criticism people want to level at me. All I would say is, where is your boundary then? At what point? At what time of day do we have the roasting of babies or the beating to death of nuns or on daytime TV? If it's no boundaries, then where is the boundary? I was watching Channel 4 the other night. I just happened to be flicking through the channels, and they've got a dating show where everybody on the show is completely naked.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Hang on. Did I miss a meeting? What the fuck? It's like 10 o'clock at night and everybody is just complete. And I'm like, okay, why? Like, what's the point? What's the point? Like, I'm looking at a guy who's paralyzed from the neck down. He's completely naked. To his left is another man with a very large cock about his eye level. And they're looking at a woman who's talking about her fake tits And a presenter who's fully clothed is going, so which one of these would you rather fuck? And I'm like, hello, can I, whoa, just give me a second here. Like, what the fuck? I swear, I drink. I've been promiscuous in my time. I've taken drugs in my time. I'm fairly liberal with what people do on their own time with their own bodies. But when it becomes institutionalized, I'm like, what are we doing? What are we teaching people to value? Do we care what we're teaching people to value? Or have we thrown it all out the window? If we've thrown it all out the window, then let's not be cowards. Let's actually say, we've thrown it all out the window. We are all the Marquis de Sade.
Yeah.
It's all pure, as you said in the last podcast, Epicureanism. Do whatever you want. Okay, I'm not gonna obey the law anymore. I'm not going to pay taxes. I'm not going to. Where's if we have no boundaries? Where does it all go? I'm getting excited again. Listen.
Excellent.
Let me just sit back and you ask me some questions.
No, I did like that because I was going to point out that I think we had a conversation about when I was about 18, 20. And I remember having I think you were in Newcastle at the time, and I think we were with a couple of friends. And I remember you at the time saying something like, I don't think they could advertise this type of film when I was 20. So that would have been 10 years. Prior to that, I would have been 10. Yeah. And I was having the same, it only came into my brain because I was having the same conversation with someone yesterday. Yeah. I thought, I'm sure Richard said that 10 years ago. But I was looking at an advert in a bus stop. Yeah. And I was like, I'm sure they wouldn't have been able to put a picture like that 10 years ago up.
Yeah.
I'm positive.
What was it of?
It was, I can't remember, it was for a film.
Yeah.
And it was almost cartoon-like, but it was a woman. She basically just had her nipples covered, but she had a gun in one hand, a knife in the other. Yeah. And there was blood everywhere around the poster, and there was blokes. And it was just, I was just positive. I don't know, maybe it's because you get older, but I was just positive they wouldn't have been able to advertise something like that in the open, like that, 10 years ago.
Well, they certainly would have agonised over it. I mean, if you think this is not conjecture, we know that campaign posters have been pulled in the past for being too sexual or too violent. We know that. We know that there are films that have never been rated to this day, on the basis that, like, it's different by country to country, but in this country, in the UK, if you show a film that is just graphic and shocking and has no narrative purpose, they're not supposed to give it a rating. It doesn't get classified. That's the law in the UK as far as cinema goes. But for some reason, they're still rating these films whose purpose is, you're now going to watch an hour and a half of different people being tied to tables, tied to chairs, and tortured to death. I keep on coming back to that because I can't understand why I'm the only person or one of the very few people who finds that so upsetting. The fact is that if it's the trivializing of a real thing. I wonder what would happen if people did that with rape movies. If they just said, right, we're going to make rape movies. And everybody goes, oh no, you can't have rape movies because that feeds into rape culture. Okay, why can we have torture movies? Because there's no such thing as torture culture. Yes, there is. But then, have you ever heard of Amnesty International? Go and speak to them. They'll tell you all about the tortures going on right now in the world. It's not imaginary. We're not shooting zombies in this film. We're not driving stakes through vampires' hearts. We're showing things that are happening right now in this very moment all over the world. I don't understand why that's okay, but this other thing isn't.
Well, I did remember reading one thing about sublimation. Talking about, it was an argument that violent video games, which I'm sure was in the news all the time when I was about 15, should kids play violent video games?
Yeah, they were, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, but at the time, I remember reading, I can't remember what author or what psychologist it was, but they were saying a lot about, coming back to sublimation, if you take out if you've got a very aggressive person who's prone to violence but isn't necessarily a sociopath, psychopath, isn't actually going to hurt anyone, if they take out any aggression they've got or any lingering imagination that they've got of actually hurting someone in a video game, they're sublimating that so they won't do it in real life.
Okay.
And it kind of made sense at the time, I thought.
Yeah.
But whether it does now, whether we've crossed too far a boundary, I don't know. Is it just becoming too easy?
The reason why you would have heard a lot about it when you were 15 is because of the Jamie Bulger case, where the one of the kids who was responsible for killing Jamie Bulger. If people don't know, like if you're in America, you wouldn't have heard of this, but if you Google
it,
Jamie Bulger, a boy of 5,
I can't remember the age, possibly,
kidnapped by an 11-year-old and 12-year-old in Liverpool, and was basically tortured to death by two young lads. I went to school with the kid whose dad was the lead officer investigating the case. So I found out a few years before most people did that the main reason the boys gave for killing Jamie was they just wanted to see a dead body.
Right.
That was why. It was just this idle curiosity. We just wanted to see what a dead body would look like. The implication at the time was that these kids were the kids who did the killing were very, very heavily into horror movies, and particularly the film Child's Play. And they focused on the fact that Chucky was this little doll toddler that happened to be dressed a little bit like how Jamie Bulger was on the day.
Right.
And that they used him as a focus of aggression, like a scapegoat for their aggression, because he was imagining that he's this evil kid from a horror movie.
Yeah, okay.
When I was at Aston University, the head of the psychology department at the time, I can't remember his surname, but his first name, but his last name was Cumberbatch, like your man, the famous Cumberbatch. And he was one of the main psychologists that Liverpool used, that Liverpool Merseyside police used to chat to these lads and find out what had happened.
Okay.
On the back of that, he ended up doing research to see if there was any link between violent video games and violent films and violent behaviour, and he found none. Yeah. He found absolutely none. He said it's not as simple as monkey see, monkey do.
Well, I think it's similar, to cut you off, sorry, to a lot of the sociological points that point out that Saturday night in any town in England, you're going to see a lot of violence. But you're only actually seeing violence from about 0.00 something stupid percent of the people that are out drinking. Yeah. So to say alcohol causes violence is obviously completely wrong. So is that the same? Is he going down the same?
I think so. I think it was like a case of false correlation. The correlation doesn't equal causation. Alcohol disinhibits your behaviour. If you're a violent and aggressive person anyway, instead of just shouting at somebody, you might headbutt them. The point about the video games releasing aggression through sublimation, I've seen similar research, and the point's been made about porn as well, where porn is available.
Oh, really?
Rape is less frequent. Some researchers have claimed.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's a stretch.
I don't know. I haven't read the research thoroughly. I know that claim has been made. I don't know. When it comes to psychology research or sociology research, it's very easy to kick holes in it.
Yeah.
So if you say there's more rape in Iraq per capita than there is in America per capita, then the answer is porn.
Yeah,
the porn is freely available in America. It's not in Iraq, so it's the porn. It's the porn. So I'm not saying that it was as stupid as that, but I don't know. I don't know exactly how that research was conducted.
Just kind of, what was the Freudian idea you said at the start?
Well, you said a Freudian idea, which is sublimation.
When you were talking about teachers,
the fetishist split.
Fetishist split. So what came into my head then as well, but I didn't want to go off point, was that there was an example one of the teachers used to give about certain parents, and the example was that they wanted to give this certain student a detention, and they wanted to give detention after school because of how bad he'd been that day. So she phones the parents and says, I want to give your child detention because they've done this. School finishes at 3:30. Can you pick him up at 4:30, or is he allowed to leave at 4:30? Parents turn around and say, no, I have to pick him up at 4:45. Teacher says, okay, can I keep him for detention the next day, or the day after, maybe next week? Parent still says, no, I need to pick my child up at 4:45. Teacher then says, okay, I'd like to give him detention at lunchtime. Teacher says, parent says, no, you're not allowed to, because he has special lunch requirements and he has to eat at a certain time and has to eat a certain amount of food and whatever, so you can't give him detention at lunchtime either. What does teacher do?
You're asking me.
I thought it was a great example. Does it go into the...
I tell you what a lot of teachers... I tell you what a lot of teachers have done is they've quit to become life coaches and NLP practitioners.
Right,
okay. A huge percentage of life coaches that are out there are former teachers.
Okay.
And because they just left the system. If we like the school system as we see it today, if you think about it objectively and rationally, the very notion of detention and all that, it's incredibly old-fashioned. And in the last podcast, we were talking about time dilation. Like the difference in culture between 1960 and 1980 is not the difference in culture between 1990 and 2020. Time has accelerated. Culture is, time isn't accelerating. Culture is accelerating. So you're looking back. When you talk about detention, you're looking back into a very distant past where if you came home and said a policeman slapped me around the head, your mum would slap you again, and then say, "What did you do wrong?"
Yeah.
If a kid came home now and said a policeman slapped me around the head, you'd be like, "Show me on the dolly where the policeman raped you," because everybody's a fucking paedophile, and the policeman clearly got sexual pleasure from it, because that's just the hysteria that we live with. Is you know, and. Policemen, like security guards, and like the job I used to do, nightclub security, they can't move. They can't do anything. Can't do anything at all.
Which is scary.
Mm-hmm. It's very, very scary, and it's very, very disempowering for the people who are... We're asking teachers to do a nigh on impossible job. They're no longer just... Teachers used to just turn up to school and teach a subject.
Yeah.
The teachers at my school were at Birkenhead School. Not all of them, but some of them are right lazy fuckers. They turn up, they turn their back to the class, and they just write on the blackboard and say, "This is what we're doing today. Open your book at page 57. Take notes now." And they would go like that for 50 minutes, for 50 minutes, and not stop. Try and walk into any secondary school in the country and do that now. And people will say, "Oh no, if it's a good secondary school, you'll be okay." No, you won't. I've been in them. I've been in the worst through to the best private schools. And you go, "Oh, well, an all-girls school wouldn't be like that." You're fucking joking me, aren't you? I went to the school that Peaches Geldof was at down there in London, which is mega expensive. They were horrendous. They were horrendous. Just to get, I used to say, it was totally illegal, and you could never do it. If I took a dictaphone, I mean, I worked 250 odd schools in the 4 years I was working in the education system, and a sound level recorder, and recorded the standard of volume during the middle of a class whilst I'm speaking, whilst the teacher's speaking, how much these kids are talking and how loud. I really think if you could do that in a documentary and then they showed it on Channel 4, everybody across the nation would wake up and go, "Holy shit, there's a problem." I would be like, yeah, there's been a problem for the last 15 years. Kids walk into classrooms, they don't shut up. They just keep talking. And that boundary between me and you and me and the TV, it's like when you're in a classroom, I'd have to say to the kids sometimes, like, "You're actually here. You're not in the living room watching TV. This is a real space. Like, I'm not an image on a screen. I'm a human being. I can hear the dumb shit coming out your mouth. Since you're talking to the person next to you, shut the fuck up." And then they would listen to me occasionally for about 30 seconds. They're like, "You can't say those words." I'm like, "Yes, I can. I'm not one of your stupid teachers. I'm self-employed. I can say whatever I want." So it would be the sheer noise level is just one of the multiple problems that these schools are facing. And, so when we talk about detention and we talk about the other stuff, I'm always like, well, let's fit the context. What is this whole thing called the education system? What's the point of it? And we haven't decided what that is. And until we decide what the objective of education is, I don't think there's any point doing it anymore.
So what's the psychology behind the parent, Mo, saying, "I've got to pick my kid up a quarter"? Are they just not agreeing?
They're just lazy cunts. You have to actually invest in your child's education. And again, I'm going to sound like a fuddy-duddy. It's a Latin word, and it doesn't mean shove facts into the brain of. It means to draw out the best in a person. Educare, to draw out the best in a person. And that includes the development of virtues like self-discipline. Like self-discipline and like discipline and like respect for an establishment, for an authority, for an institution. And if the parents aren't prepared to back that up, you're screwed. If your parents are slobs and thugs and morons, you have zero chance of it working. Zero chance. I blame the only way is Essex.
One thing I do notice, and it's not obviously 100%, when you look at guys in the forces, it is lads. But what I do notice with a lot of them say as well, when you speak to them, is that I used to be a real little fucker. And in my experience, and it can't go for obviously everyone, and it's not for everyone I know who's been in the forces, they do tend to have slightly more respect, they're slightly more polite, and they have slightly more respect for authority figures as well. Can you take anything from that and take it into schools?
Yeah, I mean that's what they used to do. I mean they used to have it was an almost military style of indoctrination. Certainly when I was at boarding school, we sat in silence, not because we were, entertained or interested. Like teachers didn't, I never really finished that thought before. Teachers never bothered to entertain us because they didn't see that as being their job. Teachers nowadays have to teach, they have to be counsellors, they have to be life coaches, they have to be entertainers, and they have to be diplomats, working between what the school wants, what their authorities want, what the kids want, and what the parents want, and then what they can do. So it's way too much. When I was at school, if a teacher walked in the room, we fell into silence, we stood up silently, and we waited for them to acknowledge us and address us and give us permission to sit down. That's a hell of a way of establishing classroom discipline. It doesn't really exist anywhere that I saw when I was working in the schools. In some old-fashioned Catholic schools could be a little bit that way, but yeah, you do need. You don't need it to be military. I mean, it doesn't need to be about war, and it doesn't need to be about violence and about weaponry. But you do need discipline, and that discipline can be very vigorous without being harmful to the child at all, and should be quite vigorous.
Okay, so we're not trying to say that you're a sage, but we give you 100 kids, 50 girls, 50 boys, complete mix of culture backgrounds, religious backgrounds, ethnicity, anything, disability. Where do we start? How do we actually get them to sit down?
Oh, well, that's lesson number 1 for me. That's the first thing I do with the kids, how to sit down. And then once you've sat down, how do you sit? And I would do that with them. I'd be like, hey kids, I'm going to tell you a story about an ancient warrior culture called the samurai. I go, ooh, cool. They had swords. It was awesome. They were warriors. And they did something called Zen meditation. And Zen meditation was a practice of self-discipline that allowed you to expand your consciousness so that you could see more, so that you could understand more. And so you'd have extrasensory perception. You'd be like, what does that mean? I'd be like, it means you're psychic. I'd be like, wow, okay. And now I'm going to test you all. I'm going to test you. And I'm going to test you every time we walk into this room all day. I'm going to give you the Samurai Zen test. Are you ready? And they go, yeah, okay. Are you really ready? Because this isn't easy. And I'm not sure that you're ready for this. So like, okay. Yeah, we'll do it. Okay, so you need to put your feet on the floor. You straighten your spine. You close your eyes. Don't sit back in the chair. Don't twitch, don't move. You have to be completely still. So they sit there and they do it. And I go, now keep as still as you can for as long as you can. And the weakest will fail first. Now an entire room full of children is competing to see who can be the stillest and the quietest. And I'd say, okay, keep your eyes closed. Concentrate on your breathing. And keep concentrating on your breathing. Keep your eyes closed. And don't move. Keep breathing. Keep your spine erect. And just concentrate on your breathing and stay in the moment. And I would do that because I'm a fucker. And everybody who jumped, I go, you were not concentrating, grasshopper. And everybody who didn't jump, I'd say, okay, you're listening. You've got that warrior spirit. All the rest of you jumped, you better do better next time. Now you know what's coming. So you come into the room. So at the next session, they come into the room and I'm like, are you all ready for the Samurai Zen test? They go, yeah, okay, we'll do it. Now don't jump. And the mates are going, you jumped last time I saw you. No, I never, but you jumped though, didn't you? And so they're all competing now to see who's not going to jump. And I'm like, you all know what's going to happen. Just stay concentrated and do it. By the way, that is a factual thing. That is an actual Zen test, which is in a Zen class, you might get the instructor might walk behind you and hit you over the shoulder with a stick, or they might make a loud noise, and you should not be jumping. If your consciousness is one linear, unbroken consciousness, you will not jump. You're only jumping if you're dissociated, if you're outside your body and outside your mind. So this would be the whole spiel I would give them. So you said, how do you get them to sit down and shut up? I'd start there.
Yeah.
I would say every day, let's start with some meditation, because that's what we should be doing as adults. We should start in stillness. We should start the day by feeling good, by feeling happy, by being inside of our own bodies and breathing and smiling and calming our minds and calming our bodies and calming ourselves. Then we'll go and get on with the rest of the day.
Excellent.
People listen
Good start.
People listen to it and go, this is some hippie bullshit, man. Some fucking weird hippie bullshit. But no, it's not. It's essential. It's an essential human skill. It's called self-discipline. It's impulse control. It's the capacity to say, I want to do something, but just because I want to do it doesn't mean I have to do it immediately. I'm going to delay gratification. We used to talk in psychology about teaching delayed gratification to kids. I'm like, start teaching it to adults. There are so many adults who I know who would really benefit from just learning a bit of presence and mindfulness and just the capacity to delay gratification for just a minute or 2 minutes. It would make all the difference in the world.
I think I might make you rant again now. But
it's not hard today.
No, I've just been thinking about there's a certain thing happening in schools now that I keep hearing parents say, and it's about losing, and we don't seem to want to let any child lose or let any child get anything wrong. Now, in my opinion, I learn the most when I lose or if I get something wrong.
Right.
Whereas sports day is based around everyone winning, no one losing. And everything under GCSE seems to be based around everything getting everything right. Everybody getting everything right, and not getting anything wrong. Yeah. So how do we learn? Why is it like that? I don't understand.
Are these questions?
It just baffles me.
It's unfortunately it's a kind of a moral relativism that's crept in. Some people say it's cultural relativism. As part of what do they call it? There's a conspiracy theory amongst the conservatively minded that this is Marxism that has been crept into the schools to flatten everything and make it horizontal, and that a lot of the challenges that we face today and a lot of the challenges that I've been talking about is a kind of cultural Marxism that's crept in. So there can be no winners, no losers. So is the opposite of that we need winners and losers? Not really in the system that you described, in the scenario that you described with 100 kids, 50 girls, 50 boys. It depends on how things are framed. Like, what do we need winners and losers for? Do we need that classification?
Well, I mean, I think that when you go to be a sportsman or when you go to do something that's challenging, there's nothing wrong with someone discriminating against your ability. So we both try out for a running team. I win. They're discriminating against you. They're discriminating against both of us, really, because I'm better at it. But
how are they discriminating?
Aren't they?
You've jumped ahead there. No, I've heard people talk like this a lot, and I've got to admit,
I don't understand what's wrong with it.
Well, hang on. I'm a little bit out of touch. We both try and do 100 meters, and you do it faster than me because you're more trained for it than I am.
But we both win.
No, hang on. Let me finish.
Sorry.
And we're both doing the same thing. You got a faster time than I did, and the objective of that game is to get a fast time. I didn't. Who's discriminating against me? You said I'm discriminated against. Who's doing?
No, that's right. Maybe I didn't explain myself. I say there's nothing wrong with any form of discrimination. What I'm trying to say is that it seems to be not dumbing it down, but just making everyone weak. It's none of it. Oh, you didn't lose. You didn't get anything wrong.
But you said discrimination, and I've heard that used. You also said they're discriminating because you got a faster time. Who's doing the discriminating?
I suppose the power of the be, the person who's there. So no, but
hang on. Wait, slow down, because you're hitting a really, really good point here. Who's the power that be in this scenario?
I suppose it'd be the teacher, wouldn't it, with sports day?
Why? Is the teacher making you faster than me? No. What's making you faster than me?
My ability.
Your ability. So it's reality that is fucking discriminating against me. Reality can't fucking... Yes, you're getting me on a rant. Reality fucking can't discriminate against anybody. Reality is reality. You're better at running than I am. Now, as a young adult growing up, as a child growing into an adult, Do I not need to learn? Is it not an essential skill set in my life to learn that I have abilities and limitations, and that some people are better than others at other things, and that when you work really hard at something because you really, really want it, you get better at it? You might not be the best. I might never be the best 100-meter runner, but if I did it in 15 seconds today, I might be able to get it down to 12 seconds in a year's time. That's a life skill. I don't really see. This came up about from me asking you, do we need winners and losers? I personally am not sure that we do. If you're playing a tennis match, one person wins, one person loses.
Yep.
If you box, one person wins, one person loses. We don't need to over apply that paradigm. I don't think it happens as much in English culture. I think it happens more in American culture, where there's a sports team mentality that seeps into everything, that seeps into politics, that seeps into culture, that is winners and losers. No, we should, where there is a game that is being played, there are winners and losers, and that the significance of that is only what it is. If I lose at tennis, am I a loser as a human being, or did I lose that tennis match? Well, I just lost that tennis match. Maybe I'll get better at the next one.
Yeah.
This is how I would frame it if I were teaching 100 kids in the scenario that you describe. But your point about discrimination, I've heard people talk like this. It's a very dangerous narrative to say that if you have an ability and your ability exceeds that of another child, you're being discriminatory, and you're, I don't know, to use other crazy language that's bandied about to the point where it becomes meaningless today, you're oppressing me. Your capacity to run fucking oppresses me, man. You're not respecting my identity as a chubbier person, goddammit. Look at you, you're all thin and able to run. Fuck you, man. You should slow down so that I don't feel bad about the fact that I don't go running as much as you do. No, that's horseshit, and it's lunacy. We shouldn't even. The fact that we even have to make that point shows us how far gone we are, because there are people in our society and in our culture who are working damn hard to keep reality at bay.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. They like shove reality away, shove it away, shove it away, shove it away. I had somebody do this the other day on a Facebook post where I was describing, I won't go into it, but like a particular description of a psychoanalytic, it's an idea from psychoanalysis, and it was a description, and I was like, hey guys, don't forget that when we're discussing this particular issue in psychology, the psychoanalytic theory is this.
Yeah.
Somebody pops up and says, I don't like that, so no. And I'm like, dude, it's not a buffet. I'm not telling you what I prefer or what you prefer. I'm telling you what the psychoanalytic theory is.
Yeah.
Not what we want it to be. You don't get a fucking choice. But this is when the conservative conspiracy theorists are talking about cultural Marxism, this is what they're critiquing. They're critiquing this thinking style that suggests that I get to cherry pick what is real and what is true, and that I get to tailor make reality and facts to fit what I want, in the same way that my online presence does that for me. In the same way that the algorithms of Facebook only show me the stories I want to see from the political leanings I adhere to. In the same way that the algorithms of Instagram only show me knockouts from MMA fights, stand-up comedians that I like, and poetry from the Sufis. You know, that's my little world. That's my little reality.
That's a bit you like.
That's the bit of the world that I like, and I don't want to see anything else. And I think that it's warping our minds to the point where if something comes in that we don't like, we feel like we have the right to say, well, I don't like that fact, so no.
So I think what would best to make the point now is that you're not disagreeing that someone shouldn't be able to come up with a null hypothesis or throw another theory at you.
Not.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No,
what you're annoyed at is someone just going, no.
No, because I don't like it. I have another description. I'll listen to that all day. Like alternative. I like the fringe descriptions in especially when it comes to psychoanalytic theory and it comes to psychotherapy. Some of those fringe ideas can be really useful. They can be really, really juicy. Some of them are garbage. And I'm like, hit me with something else. This woman basically said, no, I don't like the way that makes me feel because it makes me conclude this. And I'm like, nobody's making you conclude anything. Learn to think objectively. Look at the statement that is in front of you. Think about it. Research it. Think clearly and rationally and non-emotionally, not subjectively but objectively. If you have a disagreement with the mechanics of what is being suggested, I'll argue that with you all day. If you're going to say no because I don't like the way that makes me feel, I'm going to just laugh, feel sad, and then delete your comment.
There's nothing wrong with agreeing to disagree as well.
Absolutely not. But that's one of the strange things, is that people have lost that ability now. And there was a time, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like people are much less willing to just argue. Now it feels like, what used to happen on internet forums is people would argue and then they get exasperated and then they would go to straw man arguments, ad hominem, logical fallacies, just through exasperation. Now it feels like you say, I think the sky is blue, and my immediate go-to response, because I don't agree with you, is an ad hominem attack. And it's like, oh, so because the sky is blue, therefore the NHS should be pulled down. And
economics.
And of course you would say that because all sky is blue lovers are crypto fascists, or so like ad hominem straw man straight away. Like I cannot. The feeling I'm getting from people is I cannot deal with the slightest sort of disagreement with my perception of reality, and if it comes in, I have to completely destroy the person who's saying it, completely destroy their argument, just so I can ignore it and go back to feeling nice and comfy where I am. Well, but this is not the way argument used to work. I mean, arguing, I don't think, like 99% of the people on the internet, it seems to me, don't realize that arguing actually has rules, it has boundaries, it has a function. There are things called debating societies, and they are adjudicated when they're run well, and there are laws. That's what a logical fallacy is. These are things that you shouldn't do in an argument. Nobody cares. Like, shut up.
Is this what we were talking about with a lack of cafe culture as well? And actually people are just a bit lazy?
Yeah, I think a little bit lazy. The lack of the capacity to sit around and argue, and to enjoy an argument, and to occasionally have your mind changed by an argument. I mean, I would really think maybe a good rule of thumb for people would be, if you can go months arguing and have not had your mind changed even a little bit, at least once or twice a month, either you're arguing with the wrong people or you're really not actually engaging in the skill of arguing.
But I would also say there's one person we know in particular who is particularly intelligent, but when it would come to religion would be particularly dogmatic, even how intelligent they are.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. No. Yeah. No, I think there are for some people there are places that they just can't go to in a rational way, and religion can be one of those things. But when you are defending an indefensible position, of course you're going to become irrational.
not right there, not now.
We did religion last time, didn't we?
You could just do it every time, can't you?
I'm going to get such a kick in when you release that. Oh, I can't wait.
I did want to speak about NLP, really, to be honest, but that kind of went by. But we might as well ask.
Mm-hmm.
I have been doing a little bit of research myself, a little bit of reading around it, but I think it's still best to ask you what actually is NLP.
NLP stands for nice long penis. Not everybody thinks the penis. I mean, there's this myth going around that it's all about girth, right? But sometimes you just want a really long length. It's not even. This is the kind of thing that really stops me from progressing and going mainstream. I can't help myself but talking about cocks. NLP stands for, I'm not even going to edit that, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And what is it? Neuro-Linguistic Programming is a really, my description of it would be, it's like a really interesting cultural artifact, which is... It's got a lot of extreme contrasts. In some ways, it's a thing of awfulness, and in some ways, it's a thing of absolute genius and beauty. Neuro-linguistic programming came from California in the 1970s, and that place and time is important. It came from a mathematician and a linguist, both young, both idealistic, both like to take drugs and snort cocaine, and they got a bit excited after a few lines of Beak one night. And they said, when it comes to psychotherapy, instead of just focusing on why people break down and cataloguing the ways in which they break down, why don't we look at the ways in which things go right? And why don't we study good psychotherapists who actually seem to get things right and copy what they do, model what they do, and then teach it to other people? That's the short version. So it's somewhat based on Timothy Leary, Robert Anton Wilson, and Terence McKenna. So it has psychedelic elements of it. It's also very much rooted in Virginia Satir's work, Fritz Perls, Milton Erickson, different schools of psychotherapy that were actually getting good results. And they were like, well, some people suck and some people are good. Let's see what the difference is. They eventually went on to be involved in different bizarre projects like Project Jedi, which was an authentic project funded by the American government to create a race of super soldiers.
Excellent.
I'm not even making this up. I've actually, the Tony Robbins Institute back in 1999 were kind enough to send me through copies of the research papers printed by the American Army, by the US Army, detailing everything that Anthony Robbins did on the Project Jedi project. I mean, I don't think Anthony Robbins even openly acknowledges that he was involved. I just messaged somebody at the Tony Robbins Institute and they went, yeah, sure, we'll send it to you. So it was really crazy. So that's in my mum's attic somewhere.
What's the basic formula? What is it doing that helps people? How do practitioners use it?
Okay, so to keep with Project Jedi as an example, so you say you have a skill. You want to teach soldiers how to fire a pistol faster. You don't want it to take them 3 months to get to a certain level of accuracy. I'm just throwing numbers out here. You want them to do it in 3 days. So you would take a special forces soldier who's really good at shooting a pistol. You would break down what he is doing in its specific chunks. And this is where neurolinguistic programming had its moments of genius, which is that it looked heavily at what it calls internal representations. This is the little bits and pieces of subjective experience that go towards making up skills. Now that sounds like word salad. So let me say it like this. If everybody listening decides to extend the forefinger of their right hand and to touch themselves on the tip of their nose, in order to do that, you've got to make certain pictures in your head. You have to get certain feelings right in your body, and you have to be able to hear certain things. So you have to hear me saying, now touch your nose. Then you have to ask yourself the question, am I going to do what this guy is saying? Oh, fuck it, I may as well do it. Everybody just had that conversation. You did it.
Yeah.
Before they know it, they're extending their forefinger and their brain goes, oh, we're actually going to do this stupid fucking thing. Okay, let's see what happens. And at conscious and semi-conscious levels, you then start to run... It's called a tote. Without getting too detailed, tote stands for test, operate, test, exit. Your brain is saying, okay, I'm going to know when I've touched the tip of my nose because I will see my finger getting closer and closer, and then my finger's going to drop out the line of my vision because you can't see the tip of your nose, but I will feel a certain feeling on the tip of my nose, which is doink. When the tip of your finger touches your nose, you get a certain feeling. You feel that certain feeling, and in a microsecond, your brain goes, we did it. Stop. That's test, operate, test, exit. Okay, so test, operate, have we hit yet? No, we haven't. Keep going. Test, operate, have we hit yet? No, we haven't. Test, operate, test. Oh, we touched the nose, exit, drop the strategy. So they broke this down into visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. You would see a certain thing, you'd hear a certain thing, and you'd feel a certain thing. That would be how you would break down when you do something skillfully, and how you do something when you do something that is not something that you would want to do, like have a phobia, like a fear of spiders. They noticed that when people had a fear of spiders, they would go through a certain process inside their mind. They'd think, ooh, fuck a spider. And then they'd scream, and then they'd imagine the spider really huge with big teeth running after them, and then they'd feel it crawling on their skin and go, ooh, that feels nasty, and da-da-da-da-da. Okay, so that was the genius of NLP, is it started to break down the components of subjective experience. And it started to ask the question, like, if somebody has a phobia or somebody has a depression, instead of asking, why is that there? And then getting into the story of how the phobia was installed or where the depression comes from, they'd ask, how do you do that? Now you have a mathematician and a linguist, and they're both interested in computers because it's 70s California.
Yeah.
Computers are the next big thing. So that's where the word program, this is neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro because it's coming through your neurology. It's your brain and your body working together to make it happen. Linguistic because it's the way in which reality, it's like language is symbolism and it has a certain syntax. Reality is broken down into a language inside of your brain in order to make things happen, and it has a certain syntax. My ability to drive a car comes down to the programming language I'm kind of running in order to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
Programming, they could have called it repatterning or reconditioning, but because it was computers, it was the thing of the day, they called it programming. That's neuro-linguistic programming. That's what it is in theory, and at its best, it is a capacity to have, without any respect for history, for academic institutions, or for culture, just how do I get the job done? That's what it is at its best.
Well, in the reading around the subject that I've done, that seems to make sense, because you seem to have 50% of the people calling it bro science, pseudoscience for nerds.
Yeah.
And you have 50% of the people saying that, okay, but Freud never cured anyone. And we've got huge numbers of people we can say who will openly say they've been cured.
Yeah.
By going to see an NLP practitioner.
Yep.
So we're saying it works, then, and we're saying it's practical.
No.
That wasn't what you said. So I thought that's exactly what you were saying.
Nope.
No.
Sadly not. So here's my thing. So that's how NLP is great. NLP never really hits true potential. And NLP never hits true potential because of the people who are behind NLP. Ultimately, when Richard Bandler and John Grinder die, NLP dies. When Bruce Lee created Jeet Kune Do died the day he died.
Yeah.
They should have just stopped.
Well, it evolved. They kept it, didn't they?
They kept it.
And his whole point was evolve constantly. And what they did is they went, no, we'll do everything he told us to do all the time forever.
And that was the opposite of what he told them to do.
Yeah.
So he said, don't get stuck in the classical mess. Don't create dogma. Keep going. Keep expanding. And what happened is people took different chunks of Jeet Kune Do, and they remembered different parts of what he'd said. And there was Jeet Kune Do from the San Francisco days and Jeet Kune Do, blah, 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 blah. So it's down to people, and the people who power this through set the tone for what happens. NLP hasn't cured NLP sometimes. As you come into the room and you say, I'm not confident. So I go, okay, dude, sit down. Think about a time where you felt confident. And you'll, inside your head, you'll go, what? What the fuck? What? Have you thought of a time where you felt confident? No, not yet. Okay, try harder. Think of a time where you felt confident. Are you feeling confident now? Are you feeling confident now? Are you feeling confident now? And the poor client's going, fuck. I better say yes. So you'll actually be feeling pressured, anxious, and impotent because you can't perform. I want you to feel confident. You'd be like, but it's floppy. It's not confident right now. And then I'll anchor you through a process called NLP anchoring, where I'll touch your shoulder in a certain way and go, now. Every time you feel confident now. And you go, are you feeling confident? You go, yes, but internally you're feeling floppy. And
yeah.
And I anchor it. And then we do a whole process, the core of which is I'm anchoring you to feelings of uncertainty and insecurity. We go through it all. I let you know as the practitioner exactly what my expectations are. And I'm like, so how did you find that? Was it good? And you're like, yeah. Do you feel better now? Yep. And inside your mind, you're like, please let me leave. Please just fucking let me leave. I've got like nervous social awkwardness, back sweat, and I want to go home and cry. That's all I want to do in a dark room because this was horrible. And then you leave and I go, well, fixed another one. There, he's totally cured.
They're not coming back.
I'll never see them again. And if you say to them, are you cured? They'll be like, damn right I'm cured. Stay the fuck away from me. Not everybody does it like that. That's a gross generalization. But I know that it happens, and it happens frequently.
I mean, one thing I did see when I was doing a little bit of reading, I also found a YouTube video, and the NLP practitioner was speaking to the client. I presume it was a client, must have been a client, and saying, remember the, I want to say emotional flashback, no emotion, just go to that memory, go to the memory. Can you see you? Is it at the top? Where's the camera? Where are your eyes?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
When you've seen that, make it grey, make it further away, make it further away, make it further away, make a box, put that in the box, close the box, try and remember it again. What colour is it? Oh, I can't remember it. So a client's going, I can't remember it now. It was so vivid before.
Yeah.
And that just seemed to me to be so quick.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it could just work like that. And if it did just work like that, it would be excellent.
If it did just work like that for all the problems all the time, then you'd have that NLP cult takeover from the late 80s that I was talking about.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. I mean, it just doesn't. If you've got trauma, and if it's not, if it's an idea that's just stuck in your head for no reason, then it will, that kind of thing can work. I mean, in terms of sports psychology, it's great. Like if I wanted you to run a faster race or do better in a triathlon, I could use pure techniques from NLP and not deviate, and you will have a better day, guaranteed. You'll have a better day
because I'm more organised.
Because
or I've trained harder.
No, let's say that you didn't train harder. Let's say that just the day before a triathlon, I do an hour's work of NLP with you. After the triathlon, you will self-report that you think you perform better because of the NLP. Why? Because there are certain things that NLP reminds us to do that we should be doing anyway.
Okay.
Like controlling your self-talk, controlling your inner dialogue, focusing on what you do want to have happen instead of not happening. So actually, the day before the triathlon, you don't know you're doing it. Nobody knows they're doing it. You're thinking about times where the swim was really tough.
Yeah.
You're thinking about that time in Portugal where you were eating waves and having your right ear.
Yeah.
You're thinking about the time that your bike ride was going so well and then all of a sudden a fucking tyre burst. You're thinking about, you're vividly imagining not being able to get the fucking wetsuit off and panicking and then doing a poo.
Yeah.
Slimy poo.
Yeah.
Down your leg.
Big poo.
Slimy poo down your leg. It never happened, but let's pretend that. This could be a post-hypnotic suggestion.
Exactly, yeah.
Next triathlon you do, you'd be like, Rick, I did a shit, you bastard! Get that out of my bloody head. So you're actually doing a lot of bad stuff. So NLP goes in and does like a little house clean and sensible stuff like, hey, well, let's think about how awesome it's going to feel when you get a better time that you imagined. You pace yourself during that swim, you stay comfortable, you stay relaxed, you do a good swim, and then you have a good transition. You know, it's like sports psychology. You will have a better day.
I mean, I know you're on a point again as well, but it does make me think of anyone that you look at who's very, very, your Michael Schumachers, your Michael Jordans, your Lionel Messis. They're actually quite openly, I'm absolutely brilliant at this.
Yeah.
And you do get the other thing that always interested me was the Steve Irwin thing. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't that
beautiful?
That thing absolutely beautiful? It's going to kill me. But isn't it beautiful? And it's gentle and it's lovely. I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to roll around with it and play with it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
That's a lot of self-applied NLP. This is beautiful. It's fascinating. It's wonderful. It's part of life. It's part of nature. Oh no, something's stuck in my heart. Oh fuck, I'm bleeding out and dying. You know, reality does get through. Reality is still reality, whatever people want. But
when I see the best sportsmen, and maybe when I've read a little bit about the best people who've worked, best entrepreneurs, not necessarily they think they're brilliant, but I'm brilliant at this, I'm going to win, I'm good, I can do this is going to be the best time, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to go harder, faster, harder, better.
Yeah. A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times you will hear that. I know that I'm like that with the stuff that I'm good at.
Yeah.
I'll just go, why should I fuck around? Yeah, I'm good at this.
Yeah.
I can do this. That can be your acknowledgement of something that you already know objectively to be true. Or it could be an effort to kind of pump yourself up and go, I want to be good at this, so I'm going to say that I'm good at it. It certainly helps. It shouldn't harm you.
No, I mean, and I've also read about the whole thing of the Schwarzenegger. He would say to himself, "I'm going to get bigger. I don't know, lats and shoulders. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. It's
lats
going
to be bigger,
or whatever. I don't know, whatever.
Lats aren't shoulders.
Things, muscles.
Yeah. No, he had a lot of very, very strongly narcissistic, with a little n, not necessarily personality disorder, self-talk about being a god, about being the best, and then he was a god of bodybuilding. He was the best.
And then when I read a lot about visualization, a lot of the best people seem to be able to, they almost have foresight, because they've seen what they're going to do so many times, and they've studied what they're going to do so many times.
That's what you should be doing. So if you're going to become better at shooting a pistol, to use the example from Project Jedi. You should be telling yourself and visualizing yourself shooting a pistol really, really well. And there are techniques in NLP where like you might see the best pistol shooter, don't know what you call that. You imagine him or her doing their pistol shooting very, very well, and then you imagine floating into their body. You see the world the way they see it, you see the range the way they see it, you feel the gun in your hands the way that they do, so on and so forth.
And they win.
And they win. It really does work. That stuff really, really helps. But you've got to do it a lot. You can't just do that in one NLP session. You've got to brainwash yourself for years and years and years. That's what I did with the Spartan Life Coach.
Right.
It was just like, I'm going to become really good at this, or I'll die trying.
Right. Okay.
And just don't stop. Don't stop. Find a solution. If there isn't a solution, we'll either find one, or we'll make one, or we'll die. Or I'm going to die trying.
Steve Irwin philosophy.
A little bit like that. NLP has really, really helped me with that. I mean, I use a lot of state projection, a lot of reframing, they do a lot of pattern interrupts. So I swear, and I make crude jokes at the right moment that make people like. A pattern interrupt is when you're thinking about doing something, like if you're going to go and make a cup of tea, and then you're in the process of your pattern of making a cup of tea. If I throw a flashbang into the room and you go, shit yourself, back shitting yourself. I'm not putting post-it note suggestions into your head, shit yourself. That would be a rather savage pattern interrupt. Your pattern for making your cup of tea has now been blasted with something. Similarly, when people are getting into a pattern for depression, or a pattern for rage, or a pattern for whatever it is, you can actually get in there and break it. And a good pattern interrupt, a positive pattern interrupt, will be funny.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be, because there's good trauma and there's bad trauma. Good trauma can be that something is so silly and so ridiculous that you just start laughing quite hard and you sweat with the laughter, and you shit yourself because you're laughing so hard. So that can work. That can work for you as well when you're looking. But look, you cannot deny human physiology, and you can't deny what's happening at the level of the brain and neuroplasticity. If somebody has a real psychological problem, you're going to physically have to change the neural network around that problem. And you can't always do that inside of one session. But it will be either through trauma, repetition, psychedelics, or either an intense pain, intense pleasure, massive repetition, or the use of psychedelic drugs. These are the only things that can repattern the brain.
I really, really want to go into the whole rehabilitation, curing someone, and then just giving someone drugs to be in a whole state for the rest of their life.
What?
Just give someone Valium. Valium. Don't cure them.
What for, you lunatic? Why would you want to do that? Oh, you're saying that some people do that?
Yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's you're talking about how modern psychiatry works. Yeah. A lot of psychiatry is just about medicating people and having them be nice and quiet in a room.
Yeah.
That's the predominant way in which people who are, if they're heavily schizophrenic and they're having a lot of, what do you call it? Like a psychotic, many strong psychotic breaks from reality, then yes, the easiest way of handling them is to just sedate them, which is why and where Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist, not the psychiatrist, came up with the notion of the double bind theory of schizophrenia. Was that he noticed in psychiatric institutions a lot of things that patients and the families of patients were told, oh, we're doing this for the good of the patient, to keep the family and the patient happy, were actually for the good of the people working in the hospital, because it was just more convenient. And that's where he came up with the whole double blind theory of schizophrenia. But yes, no, there is a lot of scope to help people, and psychedelic drugs have been shown to do that for PTSD, for trauma. They have been shown to help. I'm not saying people should go out and take psychedelics if they're heavily traumatized. For the love of God, you've got to do your therapy. You need massive guidance. You've got to be so careful with that stuff. But the research is out there, and the indicators are good that it can really help.
I suppose, Ben, just to finish off, if someone's researching to go and see a mentor or a counsellor other than Richard, what are they looking for when we're looking at their biography, their CV? They just said NLP practitioner. You're saying no, run away.
No, I mean, some people. I mean, No, I wouldn't say run away from NLP practitioners. NLP practitioners come in all shapes and sizes. 9 times out of 10, when NLP is on the CV, it's a secondary thing. I mean, the counsellor I was seeing over in Dublin was an NLP practitioner. I said to him, do you use it? He was like, no, I can't even remember most of it. He said, I did a course 10 years ago. He was like, I don't really remember that stuff. I think I read one book and did the course. But that's standard. Counsellors and coaches and psychotherapists, they do what they do. Every human being has their own individual style of doing psychotherapy or counselling, and these are just the qualifications they stick after their name, knowing that if you're into psychodynamic theory and you see Will Thomas is in psychodynamic theory, I'll go and train with it, I'll go and get therapy from him. It's a lot more, it comes back to capitalism, my friend. We are all commodities to be sold in the market. It's Western decadence, disgusting capitalist nonsense. It's not good for you at all. Weakness, delusions. Weakness.
I did Google after you said last time. Russia is a
borderline.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It wasn't. The research paper wasn't called Russia is a borderline, was it? It was called Russia's borderline personality.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
But I was really hoping afterwards. I hope I didn't make that up. I hope that's true. I hope I didn't just talking bullshit. But it is actually true. There is a research paper saying their policies look just like borderline personality disorder. I wonder what those same researchers would make of what's going on politically now.
True.
Which personality disorder they would think that looks like. Said Richard leadingly. The angel Gabriel has sounded the final trumpet of the narcopolis. You can hide if you want to in your shelters with your guns, but God knows where you live, my pretty ones. Do you like Johnny Cash? Yeah.
I do like Johnny Cash.
I like that Apocalypse song that he sung. What was it called? Oh, God.
I can't remember, but when people say Johnny Cash, I always instantly think of Glastonbury.
Why?
Because he played Glastonbury and everyone was loving it when he was singing and when his wife was singing, when we were doing all the music. But there felt like this awkward disconnect when he'd speak between the songs.
Oh, right.
Almost like he didn't know where he was. I mean, he knew he was at a festival, but I don't think he understood the Britishness of Glastonbury and what it's about.
He must have been quite old.
He will have been old.
Yeah. Old when he was doing that.
And his wife was still alive, so it would have been a long time ago, yeah.
And he got real religious towards the end. He did some good apocalyptic songs. Oh, it's called When the Man Comes Around. God, I'm glad I could remember that without using Google. When the Man Comes Around. It's an awesome song. I love it. But no, there's nothing anybody can do, Will.
It's all over.
What's that sound? It's the final trump of the apocalypse. Angel Gabriel has called us all home. That's it.
Won't be that bad.
Any last? Go on, hit me with your final question. I'll wrap this.
I've done all my NLP questions.
Yeah.
There is obviously more podcasts to come because I've got more ideas. But this is my last NLP question that I had.
That was it.
Done.
No more nice long penis.
No.
Okay.
Excellent.
All right then, mate. We'll leave it there.
Excellent.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Cheerio.